Hi, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of Just Off College Avenue. Today we are going to be talking to Stephanie Strouth about Anchoring Hope, which is the counseling practice that she founded, as well as some other mental health topics. So I'm going to toss it over to Stephanie so she can do a proper introduction on herself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to be here. So I founded Anchoring Hope Counseling in 2020. We've now expanded to also include psychiatric med management services, and we've grown to 3 locations, and we offer, counseling med management across Southwest Virginia, and we can do telehealth also across the entire state.
Wonderful. So obviously making a huge impact. Now, I did notice on LinkedIn that you ended up pivoting from your educational pathway which was originally accounting, into professional counseling. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired that change?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we all go through things in our lives that can either pull us down or lift us up. And so I went through this thing in about my 3rd year of accounting, and it got to that point where I'm like, am I going to let this break me, or am I going to let it build me? So it became this lifelong journey of building and growing to the point of where I am today. And things that happen, of course you wish these things would never happen, but it's like you try to make lemonade out of lemons kind of situation. So that's basically why I pivoted, but that accounting degree has definitely come in handy owning a business too.
I couldn't believe that the accounting would come in handy, but I'm glad to hear that even though you were in a tough situation, you were able to kind of pivot that and do something bigger with it. So I know you've worked at multiple counseling centers, over time. Have you seen any patterns that keep rising up or concerns that you'd like to share insights on?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of different areas, but I would say this year I've really noticed this shift. It's almost like this polarization, and it's just so many things are so right or wrong. We have a lot of black and white thinking, and it's really hard it's a lot of work for us to go in there and try to undo that and rebuild empathy and understanding and connection where there's so much divisiveness. So that's been a trend lately, and it's always trying to find that sweet spot between having empathy while also having boundaries and where that is. So you have people on both ends of that spectrum, and we're trying to pull a little bit more to that middle ground. So that's probably the most recent trend that I've noticed.
Wow. I wonder if that's COVID related or just, us being online more.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, definitely online and maybe COVID, I don't know. But, as far as online, you see things in social media, you see things everywhere as far as how that impacts, and you see that further divisiveness.
Absolutely. And in 2020, when you opened your practice, Anchoring Hope Counseling, can you talk a little bit about the impact that you've witnessed so far in the surrounding communities since expanding over the past several years?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can always go into that numbers game of okay, we've served over 2,000 people, but the meaning behind that, it is so huge, because to be able to sit in a room with a person and have them go from, I had this experience, I feel like I could have done something differently, I should have done this, the shoulds, the woulda, shoulda, couldas of life, and to, by the end of that session, go to, you know what, I did the best I could with the information I had at the time, and to see that weight lifted off people, that's the impact. That's what matters, because then that has that ripple effect, and they go out into the world with a better understanding and empathy, and they're able to spread that kind of knowledge and awareness to other people. So that's the impact I think of. And as well as I'll teach coping skills and stuff, and people will come back and be like, I taught so and so this and it was really helpful. So I love that ripple effect, basically.
Sometimes you try to measure your impact, but it goes so much further beyond. You're talking about the ripple. Sometimes it's something you can't even measure because you're helping so many people. Well, during this time, has there been any collaborations that may have aided in these efforts?
Oh, absolutely. I would not be here today if it wasn't for collaborations. And, first, primarily, I feel like our collaborations are, of course, with everyone who works with, staff members. That's the biggest collaboration there is, because all of our therapists, our med management, our admin team, everyone is having direct contact with people. So those collaborations are significant. and in their importance. So I greatly appreciate everyone on our team. Beyond that too, though, I'm a firm believer that like we don't have to know all the answers. We just need to know the people to go to for the answers. So like having those collaborators, and I have this network of people that I've been able to build through different like contests that I've been a part of, or just like networking that I've been able to build up. So it's like I have a question. It's like, let me talk to a healthcare attorney about that. Let me talk to my CPA. Let me talk to payroll. Like whoever. Let me talk to my business advisor. I have those people I can go to for answers. So
That's awesome. Yeah. You're talking about the network. We always tell students, network early and often.
absolutely. This year I have learned the absolute importance of networking because I did the co-starters, that program, and the importance, like it just shone through in that experience and how important that is. So students, do it.
Yes,
Network.
do it.
It's so tough to get out if you're introverted and it's like, oh gosh, I gotta go people. But what you'll find is whenever you go out and you start talking about like things you're passionate about, the more vulnerable you are in sharing that, the more people who are drawn to your mission, the more they're going to be like, how can I help? And I've seen it play out time and time again, and it is worth the vulnerability of stepping out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely. People do want to help you. They just need to know what you're doing, what's going on, so they can help. And another part of, your personal endeavors involves working with businesses to promote supportive work environments. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just like as individuals, like we have to find that balance between, having empathy, but also like having boundaries, and where does that line go? As businesses, it gets a little more complicated because it's not just you as an individual. You have to have that balance as a company. You have to have that balance as an employer and as like a provider of services. So it's the company, your employees, and the clientele that you serve. So it complicates that balance a little bit more, and trying to figure out like where that line needs to be. There's a place where your production's going to get worse if you don't have a good balance between you and your employees, right? You're going to have higher turnover, you're going to have all kinds of issues. So finding out where that needs to be for your specific environment and really fostering a good workplace culture is huge in your success. And then, of course, you have to balance that also with your clientele needs. So I'm just like, I am passionate about finding what that looks like for individuals and for businesses.
Absolutely. And what types of approaches have you found effective? And, just what's been working?
So, I think it's a really individualized approach. A lot of times trainings are very generalized, and it's like, do this and this and this and this. But that's not going to work in every setting. Like in my setting, we're a counseling agency, so we're, of course, expected to have higher levels of empathy and understanding, and sometimes that's hard, like whenever we have boundaries for people to understand. So we have to be very cognizant about how we communicate those to people. Whereas there might be other settings that people might expect more like logical, maybe in like something more math focused, or IT, like you're going to have more logical kind of brains, and that's going to take a different approach, and people are going to want to see more like hardcore policies and procedures, and this is like how we do like that structure. So like being able to fine tune this for the type of business that you have is crucial.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you take a individualized approach for each business, because again, everyone is different, and sometimes the setting you're in is not gonna work with a baseline training. So for listeners, and this is a little bit of a switch, but for listeners who may be struggling with setting boundaries, for instance, particularly with work and life, what are your suggestions and strategies on how they can make effective change?
Okay, so thinking of this question, it's so hard because like it depends, and that's like I had lived my entire life in this gray area, but thinking of like it with this, it would depend on if it's internal or external. Like if it's external, that's going to be more like the entire workplace culture needs to shift, and like how they associate like what productivity is, or what like measurements and goals and that kind of thing. So a lot of times that's like a problem bigger than yourself,
Mhm.
and it's hard to tackle, of course, as an individual. And depending on the level of support from your team and people who are above you, kind of thing, like, is it a safe environment to be able to communicate your needs or like shifts that you might see need to happen, or is it not? And then for you as that individual, like, eventually you have to make that decision, that tough decision sometimes. It's like, is this an environment that is healthy for me to stay in or not? So making that decision and for yourself, and that's fine, sometimes you have to do that. The other part, though, is the internal stressors, and like, what is that going on within you, if it's things that you can change. And maybe that's one of those things. It's like there's legal requirements that you have to have a break, and it's simply enforcing that break. It's like, oh, I usually like work or something while I'm on my lunch. It's like, no, that break is for you to like have that break and have that space. And those little moments are often what will help like prevent you even from getting to burnout.
Yeah.
When it's more like stress, you can do those small things, those moments of recharging, those like ways of separating work from home. Of course, things like I don't have my work phone at home, or I'm not answering emails when I'm laying in bed at night. Being able to switch off basically, and going back and on in between those places, being able to kind of flow between those states is a key piece of it. And if you struggle with boundaries, if that's your thing, if there's something more internal or deeper, of course, I'm a therapist, so plug for therapy, absolutely. Like, get you a great therapist, someone who's going to help you, like, normalize and learn it's okay to have boundaries, and it's okay to stand up for yourself. And, like, through that process, of course, you're, like, learning to increase your own self-worth and, like, value and love yourself. And of course, that's a process, and sometimes that takes time.
Absolutely. And kind of going with that, like, it does take time to love yourself and get to a place where you can accept help, right? But for maybe some students and individuals who are still on that journey, do you have ways that they can cultivate happiness or small moments of joy through difficult transitions?
Yeah, so I think there's always, we can, to an extent, choose where we focus our energy on. Like, if you ask me, how's your day been so far? I could probably pick out 5 good things, or I could pick out 5 bad things, and they would all be true,
Yeah.
and it's this wide range. So, choosing where you focus your energy and your headspace and your time, like being intentional. And I always go back to mindfulness. Like, a lot of times we're just running on autopilot, especially if we're going through something we don't like. So we go into that like dissociating autopilot mode. But bringing in intentional mindfulness in your day to day, if you're kind of stuck in that negative headspace, make yourself, it's the whole gratitude journal thing, right? Like, make yourself write 5 to 10 good things about every single day. And then the more you do that, the more you start recognizing them as they happen. Mm-hmm. So that, and I'll also give a plug. We have an app called Anchoring Cope, and we actually have different things. So one of the emotions is happiness, and you go through exercises to increase and strengthen those feelings of happiness.
Well, that's awesome. We'll definitely make sure that's in the show notes, so anybody who wants to download the app will be able to access it. So for students and maybe people who aren't students at UVAYs who are considering going in to a career of mental health in the profession, what kind of advice would you give them?
Oh my gosh, I always give the same like 2-part advice. One, for any career, not just mental health, but like, go volunteer in the setting that you're interested in. Absolutely, because and not just one setting. Like, if you can go into multiple settings, do it. Of course, if we're thinking of research, the larger the sample size, the more well-rounded of an opinion you'll be able to form. So definitely do that. The second part, some degree programs are actually starting to require this for mental health, but I would highly recommend, like, if you haven't been in therapy, go to therapy and like start your own journey, because when you sit in it as a client, it gives you a whole different perspective, compared to like sitting in the chair as the clinician, and you appreciate it, and you're able to empathize with people like on a much deeper level. I had a supervisor who once said, we can only go as far with our clients as we've gone ourselves.
That's really
And
good.
and I was like, God, that's quote worthy, you know?
Yes.
Like, that's good stuff. So it's like, okay, back to therapy I go. I want to take my clients as far as they want to go. So I have to do my own internal work. And to be able to do that and to like increase your self-awareness and growth and like recognize your mistakes or places that you could have done better while giving yourself grace in those moments, like it's powerful for your own journey to be able to go through that process.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. You need to understand both sides and to get deeper perspective. I think that it's not a bad thing for programs to require that. Yeah. So I know in your profession, things are changing. More research always comes out. And, are there things that are keeping you curious or topics that have really held your attention lately? I mean, it could be career related, but it could also not be, whether it's books or anything.
Oh gosh. Okay. Something that's been really piquing my interest lately. I'm always interested in like trauma because that's my specialty, but I've been a little bit more interested in work cultures lately, and so I've been trying to research like European work culture and how different that is from like the US, and thinking of how we are so about like that hustle and bustle and like the American dream and like proving ourselves and all those things. And then I'm like, God, how exhausting is this? You get to this point to where it's like, what am I doing? And then you're like, where is somewhere else that might have a different balance? So like there's a European belief that's like maybe here we're more like we live to work, but there it's like we work to live. And so live to work to live. Yeah. So you're living outside of what you're working, and I think I have that like honor and privilege to love what I do also. So it's like I'm doing that, but if I am out here telling people like take time for yourself, like self-care and grow, like we really have to be like intentional about our time outside of work and cultivating basically that joy around that time outside of the office. It's really interesting to look into and be like, what, and this is just the part of being like an adult, is looking at what ideas have essentially like been poured into you throughout your entire life, and then being like, what are my values, and what of this do I want to keep? Like, well, maybe you continue loving what you do, or it's like, okay, I do what I do to make money so I can go do things out. You just got to find out what fits for you. And at the same time, it's maybe are some things from other cultures that you could pull in. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, what are things we can pull from a wider sample, basically, that works within where we are.
I love that. I really do. Well, for those who want to connect with you and or Anchoring Hope Counseling, where can they do that? What are the ways?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, our app, it's on the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. It's just Anchoring Hope. Our website is ahchope.com. Feel free to put that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
But you can go there, and they'll have links for like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, stuff on there. So
Absolutely. And if there's any students who maybe want to, I guess, pick your brain a little bit more about mental health counseling as a career and things, is the best way for them to connect with you, like on LinkedIn or?
Honestly, I do have my LinkedIn. They can find me on there, just Stephanie Strouth. They can do that, or Facebook, or our phone number. You can always call. You'll get me or one of our admin team. It's 276-298-5034, and they'll get you set up with me.
Well, I'll put all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming. We really appreciate having you. And for those of you who have been tuning in, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. But thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.